Hello, and welcome to another episode of Inner Work for Greater Good. My name is Emily Eldridge. I am so happy to see you. Here we talk about the inner work that's necessary to help you feel better so that you can do better and be a better human being and make a better difference in the world. Shine your light. No more of this darkness. Let's shine our lights. That's what this is all about. Today I want to talk about body and our relationship with our bodies, how we feel about our bodies, and why it is so vital that we embrace our bodies as they are in the moment. That's not to say that we may not want to improve our bodies in some ways or get stronger or healthier, but the value of, especially when it comes to inner work and in inner well-being, the value of actually loving and accepting your body. And I came up with 3 questions that I know that I think will help elicit shifts in perspective of how you see your body, how you feel about your body, the stories you tell yourself, whether or not you criticize yourself, etc. That are going to kind of poke some holes in the ways that we typically do deal with our bodies or approach our bodies or see our bodies. This has been loving myself and my own body has been an interesting journey for me, as I'm sure it is for you, for a lot of women and men too, of course, struggle with body image. I will just tell you briefly, I grew up in I went to a girls' school in Dallas, Texas, where it was like all the girls were super, super skinny. And I was always tall and kind of big shouldered. And I always felt like a horse compared to all of them. And I always wondered, like, why, everyone's so skinny and I feel so fat, even though I was not heavy or fat or anything. I even hate those words, but I wasn't. But the point is, I nevertheless always had a critical attitude towards my body. And I always looked at other girls' bodies and wished that I had their body. I actually learned in college, someone made a passing comment to me at one point, and they said that, the incidence of eating disorders in girls' schools is higher than in a lot of other environments. And I thought, well, might explain something. And sure enough, I also found out that, years later, I found out that a lot of the people around me had eating disorders. They had very toxic relationships with their own bodies. They were binging or they had anorexia. So it explained in a lot of ways why I was seeing sort of almost like distorted bodies. And that also part of that was because since girls aren't around guys every single day in a girls' school, that a lot of times there was this assumption by girls that, well, guys expect us to look like models from the magazines. And plus, of course, the school I went to was really intense and competitive. And so, always working really, really hard. And so then that, of course, applied to self, where it's like, well, I got to make my body better along with my grades. So anyway, the point is, I'm just giving you some background in terms of my relationship with my body. I was not given any messages by my mother or anyone in my family that somehow I wasn't healthy or that I needed to lose weight. I did the vast majority of it to myself. I always wanted to be better. But then the other side of it was I didn't necessarily want to have to work that hard to make my body better, but I still carried, or better, I should say, to make myself thinner. Let's put it that way. Notice that belief that was sitting there. But the point is that over the years, I've had a really kind of, just like a lot of us, a distorted perception of my own body, and a certain perfectionism, a certain self-criticism, and anxiety and aggravation, irritation, never enoughness, never good enoughness, like feeling inside. Like I don't remember in all the years. I mean, even there was a period of time when I was a lot thinner, but I was a lot thinner because I was sick, because I had an illness. And so I was having to eat a certain way that was extremely restrictive. And so as a result, my body got a lot thinner. And so I liked being thinner, but at the same time, the consequence, that what was going on with my body was I was also covered in eczema all over. So it's like, oh, great, I'm thin now, but then I'm like bleeding from my skin everywhere, all over my body and my face. So, I mean, it was one of those, like, I liked being thinner, but I also didn't like having eczema and being sick all the time. So long story shorter, now I'm 47 years old. And in the past few years, starting around when I think it was 43, 44, my body started to change. Now, those of you ladies who are older than I am probably know what I'm talking about, where my body wasn't responding the way it used to. So it used to be that if I just cut out sugar, then the fat would naturally start to come off of my body and I could get thinner again. That stopped happening. That stopped happening a few years ago. And at first it kind of freaked me out because I was like, oh my God, I'm heavier. Like, I have fat on my body and what is this? And, it's not working anymore. So the old approaches didn't work. So that has set me on the past few years of being like, all right, realizing I am a middle-aged woman and my metabolism is changing and I believe the estrogen levels are dropping. And, there's different reasons why our bodies change, right? And, I don't know if I'm premenopausal, peri, whatever, I don't know. But the point is, that's been one of the things I've noticed is that it's not as like the body holds on, my body holds on to fat. And in those typical ways on my belly and all that kind of stuff, a lot more than it used to. And so the point is, I've been trying a lot of different things. And maybe you have too. And I've learned some really interesting stuff. My attitude became, I realize I'm giving a lot of exposition here, and I will get into the 3 questions in a minute. But I realized that it really taught me, to accept, first of all, that, okay, my body changed. My body's changing. This is what happens to women my age, and it's going to keep happening. And so I need to learn how to work with this new body that I have. Obviously, it's not totally new. It's just a hormonal thing. But still, I realized, my body's responding differently. So it's almost like I need to figure out how to work with it now the way it is. And so I ended up learning about, metabolism, but then I also ended up learning about different workout programs and how certain workout programs, in fact, that historically most workout programs have been designed by men for men. And that men's bodies are very different from women's bodies in terms of how we respond to exercise and the type of exercises that we do. And why, when a lot of times women try to do it that masculine, not that we see it that way, but that's a lot of times what it is, that masculine, workout regimen, that we actually end up holding on to the fat. It has something to do with cortisol. There are other people who can talk about it much better than I, but that a lot of those workout programs actually cause women, a lot of cortisol to get into our system, which actually holds on to the fat. So that's just a little bit of information in case you're curious. I highly recommend looking that up and looking at, if you're curious about this, looking at exercise programs for women if you like to exercise but want to do it in a way that's healthy for your body. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But the point is that just a few months ago, I actually had this realization. First of all, I read this article about fat. And by the way, I realize I'm talking a lot about fat as opposed to other issues that we have with our bodies. But that seems to be sort of a pervasive issue or concern that women have. That fat, I read this article and I can share it. I think I shared it on my Facebook. But I read this article that was about actually the benefits of fat, the health benefits of fat, why we have fats on our bodies, and actually, the good that fat does for us. And also people in old, past times, the people who could retain fat on their bodies actually had a survival advantage. They had an evolutionary advantage. And it made me kind of sort of feel differently about the fat on my body and start to be like, this isn't such a bad thing. And again, I understand I'm not obese, I'm not unhealthy, but just help me shift in terms of, my body's actually my fat's actually trying to help me, that my body's actually trying to help me by retaining this fat in some ways. So the point is that shifted. Sorry, let me turn that off. That shifted. That's part of what shifted my perspective. And then something else happened, which really helped. And that was, and I don't remember what triggered this thought. It was something to consider, and it's going to kind of lead into these questions. I think of other people in the world, and I was thinking of people who have cancer, and whether they're my age or any other age. Let's say they have cancer. Let's say they're unhealthier than I am. Maybe a lot larger than I am, have more fat than I do, and, wish they had my body. Here I am I was wishing I had other people's bodies, and, they're wishing I had my body. I was thinking about, for me, that there's going to be a time, knock on wood, hopefully it's not very soon, but there will be a time when I have an illness or my body is breaking down, and I'm going to really wish it were different. I'm going to really wish that it wasn't just like, oh, I wish I could drop fat. It was like, I wish I could heal this illness, or I wish I could fix this issue. something much more terrible, frankly, than having fat on my body. And the point is, it just shifted. I wish I could articulate this better, because it really shifted in a wonderful way of me going, what? I need to stop with this criticism, even just the subconscious, sort of chatter in the back of my brain of thinking anything negative about my body, because my body is doing a great job right now. And there will be a time when I'm, God, I wish I really appreciated how I felt back then. I wish I really appreciated, how much skinnier I was back then, or how much healthier I was, or how good my skin looked, or whatever. Like that, there's going to be a time when I wish I appreciated myself more. In fact, I was actually in one of these Facebook groups, and there was a woman in there who was in her 40s or 50s. And she posted a photo of herself when she was in her 20s, like with a bikini on this boat. And she looked, she was really thin. She had the body that a lot of women wish they had. And she said, God, I wish I actually appreciated my body back then when I had it. But instead, I was so self-critical and I was so self-shaming. So it's another version. It's kind of like that, where it's just like, what am I doing sitting here criticizing myself, or even thinking anything negative about my body, and not fully appreciating who I am and where I am, how I feel right now. So you may or may not identify with that. But the point is, it's led me to some questions that I think are really important to consider. That hopefully by sharing with you, you can ask yourself these questions, write them in your journal, write down whatever, and ask yourself these questions. All right. So here's the first question. When it comes to criticizing yourself or thinking negative thoughts about your body, so when it comes to criticizing your body or thinking negative thoughts about your body, does it work? This is a really important question, because a lot of times, and this applies not just to how we feel about our bodies, this actually applies across the board. Most of us carry this assumption, and we learn this usually from childhood or environments, that criticizing ourselves is that it actually works. Well, if I criticize myself, then I'm going to improve that thing. If I criticize myself or I think bad thoughts, well, then that's going to motivate me to do better. Really? Is that true? Something to ask yourself. Does it work? Not loving your body, not accepting your body. How does it feel when you do? This is sort of a corollary with this first one. And you might want to ask yourself the pros and the cons. So the pros of actually criticizing yourself or thinking bad thoughts about your body versus what's not working, what doesn't work, how does this not serve me? And make a list and see what comes up. I personally have found that I am much more effective and that I stick with, life changes or new regimens or eating healthy or whatever. I stick with those a whole lot better and longer when I do it from a place of peace within myself, when I do it from a place of self-acceptance, when I do it from a place of, I'm doing this because it feels good, not because I'm trying to get rid of the criticism and the self-shaming, or not because, I need to be better. And, because of the negative thoughts, to be motivated by those negative thoughts. Like I personally, that doesn't work for me. So, if anything, the times that I have been thin, it was only because I was dealing with a health issue and I wasn't criticizing. It wasn't because of self-criticism. It was because I was just eating differently. And then the fat came off my body. But ask yourself, does it work to think negative thoughts about yourself? Is it really that motivating from a healthy perspective, in a healthy way, in a lasting way? A lot of times what happens when it comes to trying to make changes in our bodies, they always talk about this with weight loss and all that kind of stuff, is that we'll jump into it. It's like, no, I'm going to really do this. And people jump into it for a while, but then it falls off. Either they go at it too fast and too hard, or they get frustrated because they're not getting fast enough results, whatever it is. But the point is, it's not sustainable. In my experience, it's not sustainable to do things from this negative place, from a self-critical place. That my experience, at least, this is how it works for me. I will just say that for myself, is it works from a place of, if I focus on, what are the benefits of this? How could this help me feel better? But also from a place of, and this is what happened to me recently. I was in this place of I accept my body. I'm not insecure. I love my body. It's great. But then I notice I'm like, well, I'm starting to, be a little lax with my eating. So you know what? I'm going to start working out. I'm going to start doing this workout. And in my case, it's 20 minutes a day for 4 days a week. And I'm getting results. But the point is, I feel better. Do I notice that my body's changing? Does it look like I'm losing weight? I am definitely not losing fat as quickly as I used to, which is kind of like, but I'm like, that's all right. I feel better doing this. So it's not from criticism. It's more from like, I like to feel good, and I feel good doing this. You see, not like I have to get thin because I want to, okay. First question, does it work? Write down the pros and cons. How does it feel when you think negative thoughts about your body? Okay. This is all by way of shifting how you see yourself and shifting those inner feelings. Number 2, who would I be / how would I feel / what would I do differently if I accepted my body? Okay, so if you accepted your body, let's just pretend you're already that person who accepts your body completely, even if you're this big or this big or this big or this big, whatever, or you're sick. Maybe you do have an illness and you're in this inner war with your own body. Who would you be? How would you feel? What would you do differently if you accepted your body as it is right now? Who would you be if you accepted your body? Imagine yourself, complete state of love and acceptance for yourself and your body. How would you feel? How would you move through the world? What different choices would you make? How would you approach, the way you dress? How would you feel with your friends? How would you feel in bed with your partner? There are all kinds of ways that your life can change if you were to accept yourself. And it's good to think of it almost hypothetically. Oh, well, what if I accepted myself fully and completely in my body? What if I really did embrace my body the way it is and appreciate what it does for me and appreciate where I am right now? How would it feel? Good, another really good question to ask. And then the third one is, and this one, I got to be honest with you, this one I'm a little bit sort of about but I want to make sure this is received in the healthiest way. And that is, who can inspire me to love my body more? When I'm talking about that, I'm usually, in my case, I think about people who are like in the public eye. And I look at some people where, maybe they have a lot more fat on their bodies than I do, and they embrace themselves so completely, like they just shine their lights. So I think Lizzo, the singer and the flautist, like I don't even follow her that much, but from the little bit I've seen, I'm like, she's amazing. And she's so much, she has more fat on her body than I do. And it's like, she just shines her light. Like, who cares? She does. She's just completely herself. Does she have her own insecurities? Possibly. But at the very least, this is how it appears. It's like she seems like someone who just completely embraces herself. Or sometimes I'll see like celebrities who went from being super, super thin, and then they kind of normalize, if you will. They get they're not super skinny anymore. Now they're sort of more normal looking. I shouldn't say normal looking. That's not, I don't want to put judgments on here. But, they've gained some weight. Let's say they have more fat on their bodies now. And then they'll say, you know why? Because this is healthier for me. Back then, I was miserable. I was depressed. I was on drugs. I was, starving myself, whatever. And they're like, but I accept myself more now. And this is my body. And I embrace my body as it is. To me, that's inspiring. Because I look at it and go, what, if that person can do it, and they're like famous and everybody's looking at them and they're like, you know what, I'm loving my body the way it is. I'm like, I can do this. So to me, that's how to look at it, is to let other people inspire you, not to, that's in my opinion, when it comes to comparing myself to others, I do not compare myself to others if it's a form of criticizing myself. I only do it as a form of inspiring. And so, what, that person's really inspiring me. That person, with their honesty, with their vulnerability, with their service to the world, with their whatever, like, wow, that's really inspiring and wonderful. And it gives me confidence, or makes me feel more confident to, like, I can do the same thing. You see? So when it comes to your body, there are now so many more examples. I mean, we're not living in the 50s anymore. We've got so many more examples of the body positivity and all that, but of people who are just saying, you know what, screw the old ways. I feel so much better when I love myself and I embrace my body. And frankly, whoever's going to criticize me, that's your stuff. That is your negativity. That is your self-criticism, and they reject it. So that's something else to consider. You know what? If this person can embrace themselves, then I can embrace myself too. So I just want to share those things. I also want to encourage, when it comes to loving and accepting your body, the reality is we all have different bodies. So there are plenty of people who could look at my body like, oh my God, I wish I had her body. And you know, there are people I can look at other people and be like, wow, I wish I had her body. You know, so we can all have, but we all have different bodies. We all have different metabolisms. We all have different goals. We all have different stressors. We all have different life experiences. You know, there are a lot of situations where like certain kinds of trauma results in people actually having a lot of fat on their bodies as a kind of self-protection. So we all have different factors in our lives and different bodies in our lives and in our bodies that affect how we appear in the world. I strongly encourage you to do what works for you. Don't follow somebody else's, you know, ideal or think that, well, I got to do this thing. Do what works for you. And if you really feel like, this is what I've done for myself, you know, I tried different exercise programs, and it's like some of them I was like, you know, this is stressing me out too much. I don't want this to be stressful. So I let it go. I tried another one. I'm like, oh, I kind of like this one. This actually builds in rest, which is kind of cool. And it's designed for women. Oh, okay. So I do that. Then there's another one that's like a dance one. And so the point is, do what feels right for you, or even when it comes to eating, do what feels right and good and healthy for you. It means having sometimes to just scrape away all the external excess messages that we get and really tune into your own body and trust your own body and honor your own body. I guarantee you that by doing that, you are going to get wildly better results than if you go through life criticizing or thinking negative things about your body, because a lot of times the body actually responds to us. So if we have positive thoughts about our bodies are going to work better. This is why this is all also about inner work for greater good, because the body is a vehicle through which you go through life. And if you're thinking negative thoughts about your body, that's going to reflect in your body, in your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, and in your chemical well-being. So this is super, super important that we all have positive feelings about our own bodies. Again, not to say you don't want to make some adjustments. I've been working on stuff, but I'm doing it from a place, as I said, of positivity about myself. I'm not getting the results as quickly as I used to. It used to frustrate me. And now I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to keep doing this because guess what? It feels good. And, you know, if my body responds to it by dropping fat, then great. But in the meantime, I feel great. It's making me feel better. And like I said, you know, one of the things that really shifted me too was to think of, you know, it in a healthy way, I think, project into the future and think, or even in the past, and think, you know what, there have been times when my body, you know, maybe you've gone through a life-threatening illness, or maybe one day you will, or maybe, you know, I'll just give you an example. I spent a lot of time around people in wheelchairs with spinal cord injuries. My husband's on a wheelchair rugby team. He doesn't have a spinal cord injury. He has physical difference. He was born without legs and has 6 fingers. But the point is that there are all these guys who have been through hell, like where they had such bad spinal cord injuries that when they woke up, all they could do is move their shoulders. And now they're world-class athletes. So you talk about going from here to there, that teaches you appreciation. So it's just a way of saying, like, compare, whether it's comparing to where you have been in the past or comparing to, you know, sort of not to freak yourself out, but in the future, like we all age. And so the body doesn't respond as much as we want to necessarily as we age. So, you know what, appreciate it the way it is right now, where you are, and love yourself and accept yourself. All right. I hope this has been helpful. As always, this is Emily Eldridge. Please do check out the free course, free community in changelight.world. And you can always email me with any questions, emily@changelight.world.com. Or no, changelight.world. There's no .com. Changelight.world. All right. Great to see you. See you next week.